Welcome to another episode of Final Four Rewind, brought to you by Jim McKay Chevrolet. Bill Rowland here with Tony Skinn on a special edition of Pat's Chat. Of course, Tony was a senior guard on that 2006 Final Four team, and we've talked about all the games, Tony, and gone into different things. So let's talk about your journey to where you are now as an assistant coach with Seton Hall. It started right after 2006 when you went over to Europe to play. Tell me about your experience over there.
Oh, man, it was a great experience. I had a chance to, coming out of Mason, I had a chance to go play in First Division France. Went there, played there for 3 years. That was awesome. Had a chance to play against some really good players, made some pretty good money, and that kind of steamrolled me into my opportunity to go play in Italy with a really, really good team. Spent the year there. After that, I believe I went to – I'm getting old, man, because now my memory's all messed up. Went from there to Germany, I believe, played a year in Germany with a really good team, Braunschweig. We finished top four. And then my last season in 2012, I played in Israel and had an opportunity to just kind of go from Israel right into the summer preparation with the Nigerian national team, which, for us, for me personally, it was just kind of just something to do in the summer. Wasn't expecting to qualify for the Olympics. They had been trying to get me to jump on board for a couple of years. And I just always, I wanted my summer off. But this particular summer, I said, listen, man, I want to, be involved in something. I don't necessarily want to be at home. And next thing you know, we're playing for, in our championship game against the Dominican Republic against John Calipari. We're playing for a berth to go to the Olympics, and we pulled it off. And so that helped me, have an opportunity to play in the Olympics, which is, that goes up there with the Tony Skinn accomplishments. Obviously, the Final Four is right up there. But for an African country that's never qualified for that sport, to be able to be a part of that was something special. And, obviously, unfortunately, I actually got hurt in the Olympics, tore my quad, which at the time I didn't really know what I was, kind of battling with. But after that, kind of shut it down. 2 years later, just kind of transitioned into coaching.
So talk to me about the Olympics, as you mentioned, and I've talked to Gabe Norwood as well, because he, of course, played for the national team there in the Philippines. So you go, and you really didn't grow up necessarily in Nigeria, but you're able to play for them. What was that experience like, especially when you beat the Dominican Republic and you end up going to the Olympics? What was the conversation like and everything else? Because you're a U.S. kid going over there to play for Nigeria. Yeah,
it's it all kind of just happened. I remember getting a phone call from, I think he's the general manager now for the Toronto Raptors, Masai Ujiri. And I remember getting a phone call maybe like my second or third year overseas. I don't have the typical African Nigerian name. Anthony Skinn sounds normal. But somehow he tracked it down that I was Nigerian born and asked me, if I wanted to be a part of this thing. And I said, yeah, absolutely. But I would always go on a training camp, but for whatever reason, I just want to kind of get ready for my season overseas and would just always kind of say no to it. But again, that particular summer, I had formed some relationships with some of the guys, Ike Diagu, Afaruq Aminu, and they're just like, hey, listen, man, I think you should hop on board. And it was the smartest decision that I made because it gave me an opportunity really to just experience something that I would have never thought about. We actually played in the qualification game was in Venezuela. And that was for, the last couple tickets for the Olympics. And we were actually in the pool with Venezuela. And, that's a home game for them and, crazy atmosphere. We lose that game. And so you don't have a chance of coming out of your pool if you lose your first game. And so I think after the first game, everybody was probably already halfway packed up, ready to just get out of there.
Right.
And next thing you know, we play Lithuania. We beat Lithuania, who's, top 5 team in the world. And I think we played, I can't remember if it was Russia or if it was Greece, but played Russia well, beat Greece. And that was kind of like the deciding factor on us getting into the next pool. And, next thing you know, we're playing against Dominican Republic and, we come up with that win. And I just remember those couple of weeks kind of being similar to the Final Four where it was like, holy, we going to the Olympics, you know what I mean? But just the opportunity to just now come home. You don't realize what an accomplishment it is until it actually happens. That's the one thing that I could compare the Final Four to, because then it's like, damn, we're going to the Final Four, or just me flying back home from Venezuela. Everybody's like, man, you're an Olympian. I'm like, yeah, I am an Olympian. You know what I mean? So it was a great experience. Definitely one of those experiences that I still, from time to time, I'm talking to my kids about it. So.
Well, the one thing, of course, you got to play the United States in the Olympics. And while that game didn't go quite as well as the ones against the Dominican, you still have the highlight from that game. How often do people come up and ask, or how often do you bring it up to your college kids about you putting James Harden on skates?
I do not bring it up, but that thing does not go away. I don't bring it up, and it does not go away. But obviously, like you said, I would have liked for the score to be a little bit more even, but it wasn't. But that's what you get when you're playing against the best players in the world. And we couldn't put together a good game that game. I was hurt. I ended up getting hurt the next game. And we just weren't, obviously they were the better team, but we just weren't prepared for that team. And, they showed it. And unfortunately, I got hurt, the following game. But, the move definitely is not going to die of what I did to James Harden. So.
And people that are Mason aficionados will understand that you pulled that same move against Manhattan when you were at Mason. I don't know if you remember that one or not, but that's one of my favorite Tony Skin moments.
I remember that. When you're 5'11", you got to create space. And I've done that, I've done that a ton, but it's nice to see that, it was against one of the best players in the world. So
you finish your career in Europe, and then you come home and you're trying to kind of figure out, the injury, is your career done or not? And you break into coaching in kind of a unique way. Tell me how you got first started coaching AAU here in the DC area.
Yeah. So once I got hurt in 2012, had surgery in London, came home. Again, I didn't really know what I was up against. I had signed a 2-year deal to go play in the Ukraine with Kiev, a EuroLeague team. So I was kind of looking forward to that. And 3 weeks later, I get hurt, come home, rehab for about 6-8 months. And, I'm in a good spot, but then as I started to try to challenge myself, I felt like another different type of pain in my knee. So I ended up having like a second surgery. And once I had that one, that was kind of when the light bulb hit me, where it's like, if you're not, shifty and beating everybody else off the dribble at 5'11", you're not very useful. And so I just started to just kind of plan ahead, like, what do I want to do now? This is my first time at, 30, 31, after now start thinking about my transition, and, wanted to just stay involved at some type of capacity. So I called Keith Stevens with Team Takeover, and he said, just come on over to practice, man. And, I'm not that old and not too far removed, but the culture and the AAU scene and the high school scene had obviously changed so much over time from when I was in high school. And so getting a chance to be part of an organization that's, at the top of it, it kind of gave me just kind of, this is kind of what I want to do. And I stayed in it for 2 years. And I think going into that third summer is when, Coach Conkle got the job at La Tech. And so I was lining myself up to have the opportunity, because, to get into coaching is not easy, especially at that level. But if you're doing the right things and just kind of putting yourself in the position, certain things can happen that you can have those opportunities. And that's obviously what happened with me when, Coach Conks got the job at La Tech.
Yeah. Talk about that, the relationship you had with Coach Conkle and him bringing you down there. Did you feel like because you had the relationship, you had an inside track, or did he kind of treat it like, hey, Tony, you got to interview just as hard as everybody else does? So
it's funny, man. Like, I don't know, most people know I had a very unique relationship with Coach Conks. He was part of that staff that brought me in from junior college. And, that was my guy, even through my playing professionally. He was always the guy that I would just call when I had a bad game, like, listen, this is what I'm doing. And he's such a detail-oriented type of coach. And when you're playing professionally, you need that type of insight. And I just remember having my conversations with him and, post playing and, getting into AAU, he's calling me about certain players, and we were pretty close. And so I remember when he got the job at La Tech, I remember actually being at practice with Takeover, and my phone, for whatever reason, was dead that day. It was that morning. And I go to practice, I get out of practice, I go another hour or two for whatever reason without charging my phone. And then I finally get it back turned on, and I've got, dozens of text messages, a bunch of missed phone calls like, yo, Coach Conkle just got the job, and we heard he trying to reach out to you. And I'm like, really? That's my guy. Like, I would have got the call. So Ended up calling him. He's like, what are you doing? Your phone should be on. He's already, treat me like I'm working for him. So he's, he just basically said, man, I want you to be a part of, my program. Let's get you down here. And at the time, I still thought that I was in, interview mode. And so, when I get down there, it was more, it's mostly like a tour of the campus and a tour of the facilities. And I'm like, so what's going on? What's next? So you've got the job. Just go home, get yourself together, and just come back down in a couple of days, and that's just kind of how it kind of started off.
So you go from La Tech now to a Power 5 conference there at the Big East in Seton Hall. What was that transition like, and did Coach Conkle encourage you to take that next step?
Yeah, obviously he's always been a big supporter of myself, and the transition for me was when you're working so close with somebody and have a real hands-on situation like I did at La Tech, it kind of prepares you for the next jump. And again, when you never really know what you're doing when you get into any position. I don't care what it is, whether it's basketball or any type of job. People tell you, you don't have the experience, this, that, and the other. But, going into getting the job at La Tech, I always told myself, listen, I was going to be a sponge. I was going to learn from everybody, check the ego at the door. And that's what I did. I learned from, Duffy Conroy, who's still down there at La Tech, Corey Barker, who was there for a year with us, and then Yafet King. I was very lucky because the dynamic is not always the same, but I had I had a chance to work with some really, really good guys that kind of taught me what I needed to do. And in those 3 years, man, just kind of soaked it up like a sponge. Obviously hit the trail recruiting wise, the player development and just what you need to do from a day to day and just managing, whether you're the assistant coach or whether you're, the head coach. And so transitioning to Seton Hall, a little closer to home, in certain aspects, I actually feel like this was easier than it is at La Tech. A lot of people think that it's the other way around when you switch levels. But in some senses, it's actually a little bit easier working here at Seton Hall for Coach Willard because he does allow you to just be yourself, allows you to just kind of take the same approach and just, thinking like a head coach.
So last thing for you, Tony, you're assistant now in the Big East. What's next? What's the career goal as far as this coaching thing goes? Is it that you want to run your own program someday? And what is it that you look forward to doing? Again, you're not even 40 yet, so you got a long career ahead of you. What's the goals?
I'm a student of the game, man. I'm a short-term planner because I always want to accomplish the goals that are in front of me. And I say this all the time, you can't be a head coach if you're not a badass assistant. And that's what my biggest thing. And, I try to remember and try to remind myself that I have so much to learn. I always tell people this, like playing the actual sport and getting those hours are one thing, but then being a coach and getting behind the computer, getting behind the film and just seeing a different side of it is another thing. And so, again, for me at 37, I'll be 38 in about two weeks. So I'm getting up there. Whatever opportunity is there, man, I'm all for it. But I always think about the present. We have a team here that, we should have went to the Final Four last year, but obviously with COVID, that kind of took that away from us. And so having a team that's a little bit different as far as dynamic this year, you still see some things that, you're a lot more balanced and a little bit, in my opinion, more dangerous in the tournament, just kind of like we were with that 2016. So I think we still have opportunity to just kind of make some noise this season. Just focused on that. And coaching is hard, man. You gotta keep your job first before you start thinking about another job. That's my biggest thing.
All right, Tony, it's great advice, obviously, too, with the short-term goals to finish that first before you look long-term. Thank you for your time today. We appreciate it, man. And again, it's 15 years has gone by so quick since you guys, shocked everyone and gave us such a thrill back in 2006. But we appreciate the time, and we'll be catching up with you real soon.
Man, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's always good to talk to you guys. Always good to see the green in the background as well, even though I got blue back here.
Well, we appreciate it. That's Tony Skinn. This has been Pat's Chat Rewind Final Four, brought to you by Jim McKay Chevrolet.